The lawyer's voice echoed through the stuffy office as he read Roy's final words. I sat frozen in the leather chair, my hands trembling in my lap. Across from me, Karen Wilson bounced a baby on her knee, smirking like she'd already won the lottery. Roy's sister Rachel leaned forward with hungry eyes. To Karen Wilson, I leave my entire estate worth $10 million, including the house, business, and all assets. The words hit me like a slap. My 17-year marriage meant nothing. But the worst part came next. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. As for my wife Louise, since she can't make kids, hopefully she can go make her own money. Karen actually giggled. The sound made my stomach turn. She adjusted the baby and looked right at me. "Don't forget your purse on the way out," she said sweetly. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't believe this was happening. Roy had planned this humiliation even from his grave. The room spun around me as I realized I had nothing left. No home, no money, no future. Just the clothes on my back and a lifetime of memories that suddenly felt like lies. I met Roy in college when we were both 21. He was everything I thought I wanted, charming, ambitious, with this way of making me feel like the only person in the room. He'd bring me coffee during my study sessions and leave little notes in my textbooks. "You'll never need to work a day in your life," he promised me on our wedding day. I was so young, so trusting. I believed every word. Our early years were perfect. He'd surprise me with flowers for no reason, plan romantic weekend getaways, and hold me close while we talked about our future. We'd stay up late, dreaming about the kids we'd have, the house we'd fill with laughter. Roy worked hard building his construction business, while I made our house a home. I loved cooking for him, decorating each room, planning holiday celebrations. He'd come home tired, but always had time to hear about my day. "You make everything better," he'd whisper as we fell asleep. I felt so lucky, so loved. We were building something beautiful together, or so I thought. Looking back now, I wonder if those happy moments were even real, or if I was just seeing what I wanted to see. The man I married felt like a stranger now. The doctor's words still ring in my ears after all these years. "I'm sorry, but you'll never be able to have children." The silence in that sterile room was deafening. I watched Roy's face crumble, watched our dreams die in real time. We tried everything. IVF treatments that left me exhausted and emotional. Hormone shots that made me sick. Procedure after procedure, each one more expensive and painful than the last. Roy held my hand through the first few appointments, but I could see him pulling away. The fertility clinic became my second home. Other women would leave with good news while I collected another failure. The nurses knew me by name, their smiles growing more pitying with each visit. Roy stopped coming with me after the fourth failed attempt. "I can't keep watching you get your hopes up," he said. But I knew the truth. He couldn't keep watching his dreams of fatherhood slip away. The final test results came on a Tuesday. The doctor confirmed what we already knew. My body would never create the family Roy wanted. I found him crying in our bathroom that night, but when I tried to comfort him, he pushed me away. That was the beginning of the end, though I didn't know it yet. "What about adoption?" I suggested one evening over dinner. My voice was hopeful, desperate even. I'd been reading about families who'd found happiness that way. "Maybe we could too." Roy's fork clattered against his plate. "What's the point of carrying on the family name if it's not really mine?" His voice was cold, different from the man who used to hold me when I cried. "But we could still be parents," I whispered. "We could still have a family." He shook his head firmly. "I want my son to look like me, to have my blood. I'm not raising someone else's child." The way he said it made my heart sink. Like love wasn't enough. Like family was only about genetics. "Roy, please, we could be happy." "No," he cut me off. "Some things can't be fixed, Louise." That night, he started working late. Coming home after I'd already gone to bed, leaving before I woke up. The house grew quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the absence of children's laughter. We were becoming strangers living under the same roof. I'd catch him staring out the window sometimes, this faraway look in his eyes. Like he was imagining a different life, with a different wife who could give him what he wanted. At 33, I found myself alone in our big empty house most days. That's when I started baking. It began as a way to fill the quiet hours, but soon became something more. The kitchen came alive with the smell of cookies and bread. For the first time in years, I felt useful. My younger sister Tara would come over and sample everything. "Louise, these are incredible," she'd say, her mouth full of chocolate chip cookies. "You should sell these." The idea scared and excited me. I'd never worked before, never even thought about it. But Tara helped me build a small website, taught me about social media. For a few weeks, I felt alive again. Roy hated it. "Why are you working? You're embarrassing me," he snapped when he saw me packaging orders at the kitchen table. "What will people think? That I can't provide for my own wife?" I tried to explain that it made me happy, that I needed something of my own. But he wouldn't listen. The next morning, I found my website deleted, my social media accounts closed, all my work gone. "I did you a favor," he said over coffee. "Now you can focus on being a proper wife again." But we both knew there was nothing left to focus on. Roy's business trips became longer and more frequent. He'd disappear for days without calling, coming home with vague explanations about client meetings and project deadlines. I pretended to believe him because the alternative was too painful. Then I started noticing the phone calls. He'd step into the hallway, his voice dropping to whispers followed by soft laughter I hadn't heard in years. My stomach would twist with suspicion, but I pushed the feelings down. One afternoon, his phone rang while he was in the shower. Without thinking, I answered it. "Hello?" I said softly. A woman's voice, sharp and mocking, came through the speaker. "Oh, good. I was hoping you'd pick up one of these days." She sounded young, confident. "How's the barren life coming along?" My blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" She laughed cruelly. "Someone who can give Roy what you never could. He's a father now, because of me. Time to move on, Louise." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, my whole world crashing down around me. All those late nights, all those business trips, all those lies. Roy had replaced me completely, built a new family while I waited at home like a fool. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my body rejecting this new reality. When Roy came out of the shower, I was sitting on our bed holding his phone. My hands were shaking, but my voice was surprisingly steady. "Who is she?" I asked. Roy's face went pale, then angry. "You had no right to answer my phone." "Who is she, Roy?" I repeated. He sat down heavily, not even trying to deny it anymore. "Her name is Karen, and she gave me what you couldn't." The words were like knives. "She's having my son." I felt like I was drowning. How long? 2 years. 2 years of lies, 2 years of pretending our marriage still meant something. I tried to end it, Louise, but when she got pregnant... He shrugged like it was all inevitable. I ran to the bathroom again, my stomach empty but my body still trying to purge this betrayal. When I came out, Roy was getting dressed for another business trip. "I need time to think," he said without looking at me. After he left, I sat in our empty house making a decision that should have been easy but felt impossible. I called a divorce lawyer. It was time to stop pretending we could fix what was already broken. Our marriage had died long before Karen came along. I was just the last to know. I had the divorce papers ready, finally found the courage to end this nightmare. But life had other plans. Roy came home from his latest trip looking gray and exhausted. At first, I thought it was guilt catching up with him. "I need to tell you something," he said, collapsing into his chair. "The doctor found something. Cancer." The papers in my purse suddenly felt meaningless. Whatever Roy had done, whatever pain he'd caused, I couldn't abandon him now. Not like this. The divorce would have to wait. The next 6 months were brutal. Chemotherapy sessions that left him weak and sick, hospital visits that stretched into the night. Karen never showed up once, not even when he was at his worst, crying from pain and fear. I held his hand through every treatment, drove him to every appointment, made sure he had his medications. Because despite everything, I'd loved this man for 17 years. Near the end, when the morphine made him drowsy and honest, he grabbed my hand weakly. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears rolling down his hollow cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Louise." I looked at his fingers wrapped around mine and felt nothing. No forgiveness, no anger, just emptiness. I didn't squeeze back. Some betrayals cut too deep for deathbed apologies to heal. The funeral was a surreal experience. Roy's family treated me like an inconvenience, whispering among themselves while shooting cold glances my way. I sat in the front row, wearing black, playing the grieving widow role one last time. But the real shock came when a young woman with a baby was invited to speak. I'd never seen her before, but everyone seemed to know who she was. The disrespect was breathtaking. She walked to the podium confidently, her infant son dressed in a tiny black suit. Roy was an amazing father, she began, her voice carrying through the chapel. Even though our time was short, he loved his son completely. I sat frozen as she shared intimate memories I'd never heard. Stories about Roy's excitement over his son's first steps, first words, a whole life he'd lived without me. After her speech, she walked to the casket with the baby. She pressed her lips to the polished wood and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she lifted the child and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Say goodbye to Daddy, Roy Jr." The name hit me like a physical blow. Roy Jr., the son Roy had always dreamed of, the family he'd built to replace me. I managed to stay composed until the service ended, but inside I was screaming. I thought the funeral was the end, that I could finally grieve and move on. I was so wrong. 3 days later, I was having coffee in my kitchen when I heard trucks outside. Looking through the window, I saw movers unloading boxes. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Rachel, Roy's sister, standing beside the woman from the funeral. She was holding her baby and smiling like she owned the place. "We're here to move in," Karen said cheerfully, like she was announcing a housewarming party. I stared at them in shock. "Excuse me, this is Roy Jr.'s birthright," Rachel explained, pushing past me into my own home. "You've had your turn." "You are not taking my home," I shouted, but they were already inside, directing the movers where to put Karen's furniture. Karen bounced the baby on her hip and looked around my living room with approval. "I like what you've done with the place. Roy always said you had good taste." She said it like I was the hired help who'd been decorating for the real lady of the house. I stood in my own doorway, helpless, watching strangers invade the home I'd built with 17 years of love and care. This couldn't be legal. This couldn't be happening. Karen made herself comfortable quickly, claiming the master bedroom I'd shared with Roy for over a decade. I found her unpacking her clothes in my closet, hanging her dresses where mine used to be. "I like this room better," she said casually, not even looking at me. "More space for the baby's things." I tried to stand my ground. "This is still my house. You can't just—" Rachel appeared in the doorway like some kind of enforcer. "That baby is a good. You're not." She physically moved me aside, her hands rough on my shoulders. "Roy wanted his son to grow up in this house." I watched helplessly as they transformed my bedroom into a nursery. The bed Roy and I had shared was pushed into the corner to make room for a crib. My photos were taken down and replaced with sonogram pictures and baby milestones. Karen held up one of my nightgowns with distaste. "Did Roy actually like these old-fashioned things?" She tossed it in a garbage bag. "Good thing he upgraded." Every word was a calculated blow. She wanted me to know that Roy had shared intimate details about our marriage, had mocked me even in her bed. The humiliation was complete. By evening, I was sleeping in the guest room of my own house, listening to a baby cry in the room where I'd once dreamed of children. I couldn't stay. Every corner of the house held memories that now felt poisoned. Every room had been claimed by Roy's new family. I was a ghost haunting my own life. I packed only what I could carry: a few clothes, my mother's jewelry, some photos from before everything went wrong. I left behind my wedding dress, still hanging in the hall closet. I left behind Roy's love letters, tucked away in my nightstand drawer. I left behind 17 years of my life. Karen watched me pack from the doorway, the baby sleeping in her arms. "Make sure you get everything," she said sweetly. "I'd hate for you to have to come back." At the front door, I turned for one last look at the home I'd loved so much. The Christmas tree was still up from Roy's final holiday, the lights twinkling on presents he'd never see opened. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out," Karen called after me. I walked down the driveway carrying my suitcase, leaving behind everything I'd thought was mine. Tara was waiting in her car, tears in her eyes as she watched me approach. I climbed into the passenger seat and didn't look back. My sister reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. But sitting there with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, I couldn't imagine how. Tara's guest room was tiny, Just a single bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out at her neighbor's fence. But it was mine, and after everything that had happened, that meant something. I cried myself to sleep for weeks. The bed was too small, the walls too close, everything too different from the life I'd known. I felt like I was drowning in grief and shame, but Tara was patient. She'd bring me tea in the mornings and sit on the edge of the bed while I stared at the ceiling. She never pushed, never told me to move on or get over it. One afternoon, she found me curled up with Roy's old sweater, the one I'd managed to sneak into my suitcase. "Louise," she said gently, "you built something that made you happy once. Maybe you should do it again." She was talking about the baking, about those few weeks when I'd felt alive and useful. It seemed impossible now. How could I start over with nothing? "I don't even have a kitchen," I whispered. Tara smiled. "You can use mine." That night, for the first time since Roy's death, I fell asleep without crying. Maybe Tara was right. Maybe I could build something new from the ashes of my old life. It was a tiny spark of hope, but it was something. I started small, really small. Just a few dozen cookies baked in Tara's kitchen late at night when I couldn't sleep. My hands remembered the motions, measuring flour, creaming butter, rolling dough. The familiar actions soothed my broken heart. Tara convinced me to re-register Goode Bakes as a business. It felt strange using Roy's name for something that was purely mine, but it was legally mine now too. A bitter irony. Orders came in slowly. A few neighbors, friends of Tara's, people who remembered my baking from before. I worked through the night, my feet aching on the kitchen tiles, my back sore from bending over hot ovens, but I didn't stop. The work was exhausting but healing. Each batch of cookies was proof that I could create something valuable, something people wanted. I wasn't the useless woman Roy's will had described. 3 weeks later, I was packaging an order when I heard the doorbell. A woman stood on Tara's porch, holding one of my chocolate chip cookies. "I'm the owner of Corner Cafe downtown," she said. "My customer gave me this to try." She took a bite, and her eyes widened. "These are incredible. Would you be interested in a retail partnership?" I stared at her, hardly believing what I was hearing. "You want to sell my cookies?" "If you can keep up with demand," she smiled. "I think you've got something special here." The cafe partnership changed everything. Suddenly, I had regular orders, steady income, a reason to get up every morning. The work was hard, 12-hour days in Tara's kitchen, my hands constantly covered in flour and chocolate. But for the first time since Roy's diagnosis, I felt proud of something. A boutique downtown started carrying my brownies. A catering company hired me for their events. Word was spreading that Goode Bakes made something worth having. I designed simple business cards with my name and phone number. "Goode Bakes," they read in elegant script. No fancy logo, no corporate address, just me and my talent. My hands were rough from work, my back ached constantly, but I had dignity again. I wasn't Roy's barren wife or Karen's replacement. I was Louise, and I made things that brought people joy. Then one Tuesday morning, an envelope arrived in Tara's mailbox. Official legal stationery with my name typed on the front. My stomach dropped as I recognized the law firm, the same one that had read Roy's cruel will. I tore it open with shaking hands. "Estate of Roy Goode. Final will reading," the letter said. "Your presence is requested." I thought we were done with all of this. I thought Roy had inflicted his last cruelty. But apparently, there was more. There was always more. Back in that same suffocating office, I felt like I was reliving a nightmare. Karen sat across from me again, Roy Jr., bigger now, and babbling happily. Rachel smirked like she knew something I didn't. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the same cruel words that had destroyed my life months ago. Roy's final insult about me earning my own money burned just as deeply the second time. But something was different now. I wasn't the same broken woman who'd fled this office in tears. My hands were strong from kneading dough, my bank account growing from my own hard work. Karen giggled again when the lawyer finished, the same awful sound that had haunted me. "Don't forget your purse," she repeated like it was the funniest joke in the world. Rachel leaned back in her chair, satisfaction radiating from her like heat. They thought this was the end of the story. They thought they'd won completely. I stood up slowly, my business card holder heavy in my purse. Not because I planned to hand them out, but because they represented something these people couldn't understand: the value of earning your own way. Walking out of that office for the second time, I didn't cry. I was done crying over Roy Goode and his selfish family. They had no idea what was coming. The call came 2 days later, while I was mixing batter for a large wedding order. I almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something made me pick up. "Louise, this is Frank Morrison from Morrison Accounting." I remembered him, Roy's former accountant who'd always treated me kindly. "I heard about the will reading. I think there's something you need to know." My heart started racing. "What do you mean?" "Roy died with significant debt, more than the estate can cover." Frank's voice was gentle but urgent. "The business was failing, Louise. He was borrowing against everything: the house, the equipment, even his life insurance policy." I sank into a chair, the phone pressed to my ear. "How much debt?" $12 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. "The estate is worthless, Louise. Worse than worthless. Karen's about to inherit a disaster." After I hung up, I sat in Tara's kitchen processing this information. Roy hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been living a complete lie. All that money Karen thought she was getting, all those assets Rachel had coveted, none of it was real. I should have felt satisfied, but mostly I felt sad. Roy had destroyed himself trying to play the successful businessman, while his real business crumbled around him. Within hours, I knew, the bank would start making phone calls. I was right about the phone calls. Frank called me again the next morning with an update. "The estate's been frozen pending investigation," he said. "Karen can't access any funds until the debt situation is resolved." I imagined her shock, trying to withdraw money for baby formula and finding empty accounts. The woman who'd mocked my inability to provide for myself was about to learn what real poverty felt like. The house I'd loved so much, the one where Karen had made herself so comfortable, was about to be seized by the bank. All of Roy's construction equipment, his company vehicles, even the jewelry he'd bought for his mistress, all of it would be taken to pay his debts. That afternoon, Tara burst into the kitchen while I was baking. "You have to see this," she said, pulling up a video on her phone. It showed Karen's face, pale and shocked, as repo men loaded Roy's luxury car onto a flatbed truck. The same car she'd been driving around town like a queen. Baby Roy Jr. was crying in her arms while she argued with the uniformed men. "Ma'am, we have our orders," one of them said firmly. "The vehicle's been repossessed due to non-payment." Karen's voice was shrill with panic. "But this is my car. My baby's car seat is in there." The man handed her the car seat without sympathy. "You'll need to make other arrangements." Watching her desperation should have made me happy, but it just made me tired. My business kept growing, while Roy's empire collapsed around Karen. The commercial kitchen I'd been dreaming about suddenly seemed possible. I signed a lease on a small space downtown, nothing fancy, but mine. The same suppliers who'd once turned me down when I was just a woman baking at home were now calling me back. "Miss Goode, we'd love to discuss a partnership," they'd say, the respect in their voices genuine. I hired my first employee, a young man named Tyler, who reminded me of myself, eager to work, grateful for the opportunity. He helped me move my equipment into the new space, and I felt like I was finally building something real. The day we opened, there was a line around the block. People had been following Goode Bakes on social media, watching my journey from heartbreak to success. They came not just for the cookies, but to support a woman who'd refused to give up. A former bakery supplier who'd rejected my business called that afternoon. "Miss Goode, we made a mistake not working with you before. Would you consider giving us another chance?" I thought about all the times I'd been dismissed, all the times people had underestimated me. "I'll consider it," I said diplomatically, knowing I'd already chosen suppliers who'd believed in me from the beginning. Loyalty, I'd learned, was earned, and these people hadn't earned mine. Karen's desperation reached new levels when she tried to sue my bakery. First, she claimed I'd used Roy's money to start the business, which was easily disproven when my lawyers showed I'd started with a loan from Tara. Then she tried to claim ownership of the Goode name, arguing that her son had more right to it than I did. The judge dismissed this quickly. I was still legally Roy's widow, making me more entitled to the name than his illegitimate child. The lawsuits were clearly desperate attempts to get money from somewhere, anywhere. Karen was drowning in Roy's debt and grasping for any lifeline. Her lawyer looked embarrassed presenting such weak cases. During the second hearing, I actually felt sorry for the man. He knew he was fighting a losing battle, but Karen was paying him whatever she could scrape together. "Your Honor," he said half-heartedly, "my client believes she has a claim to the business assets." My lawyer stood up confidently. "Your Honor, Miss Goode built this business entirely after her husband's death, using her own resources and labor. Miss Wilson has no legal standing whatsoever." The judge agreed, and Karen was ordered to pay my legal fees. Money she definitely didn't have. Walking out of the courthouse, I saw her on the steps, baby Roy Jr. fussing in her arms. She looked older, worn down by stress and poverty. The alliance between Karen and Rachel crumbled as quickly as it had formed. Tara showed me the social media drama unfolding in real time. Karen had posted a desperate message. "Rachel Goode promised we'd be rich. Now I'm living in a motel with my son while she won't return my calls. She used us." Rachel's response was swift and brutal. "I never promised anything. You made your own choices." Then she blocked Karen entirely, washing her hands of the whole mess. I watched this play out from my comfortable new apartment above the bakery. It was modest but clean, and most importantly, it was mine. No one could take it away from me or invite themselves to move in. The baby had to be walking by now, getting into everything the way toddlers do. I wondered if Karen ever thought about the stable home she'd destroyed, the family she'd broken apart for a fantasy of wealth that had never existed. Frank called with another update. "The house sold at auction," he said. "Didn't even cover a quarter of what Roy owed on it." I thought about my old home, probably being stripped and renovated by strangers. All those rooms I decorated with such care. All those memories now belonged to someone else. It was time to let go of what was and focus on what could be. 3 months later, Goode Bakes won the Local Business Excellence Award. Standing at the podium in the community center, looking out at faces that had watched my journey, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "They said I had nothing," I began, my voice steady and clear. "But sometimes nothing is the best place to begin." The applause was warm and genuine. These people had seen me at my lowest and celebrated my rise. They understood that success earned through your own effort tastes sweeter than anything handed to you. After my speech, a woman in an expensive suit approached me. "Miss Goode, I'm Patricia Wells from Wells Capital Management. I'd like to discuss expanding Goode Bakes regionally." My heart raced as she outlined her vision. Goode Bakes in grocery stores across 3 states, franchising opportunities, maybe even a cookbook deal. The numbers she mentioned were larger than anything I'd dreamed of. "You've built something special here," she said, handing me her card. "Something authentic. That's rare in business today." Driving home that night with the award on my passenger seat, I thought about Roy's cruel words about earning my own money. He'd meant it as an insult, a final kick when I was down. He had no idea he was giving me the best advice of my life. 2 years after that terrible will reading, Goode Bakes had become a regional success. My cookies and brownies sat on grocery store shelves in 5 states. Tara had quit her job to become my CFO, and we'd hired 12 employees. The flagship store was everything I'd dreamed of. Bright, welcoming, always filled with the smell of fresh baking. Customers would drive hours just to visit, to meet the woman whose story had inspired them. We'd expanded beyond baked goods too. Goode Bakes coffee mugs, aprons, even a line of baking mixes for people who wanted to recreate my recipes at home. Everything bore my signature, my name, my story. One afternoon, a young woman came in carrying a baby. For a moment, my heart stopped. She looked so much like Karen. But this was a customer, someone who'd been following my journey online. "Miss Goode," she said shyly, "I just wanted to thank you. I'm going through a divorce, and your story gives me hope that I can build something too." I handed her baby a small cookie and smiled. "You can build anything you're willing to work for," I told her. "Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise." That night, I stood in my store after closing, looking at everything we'd built. The awards on the walls, the photos of happy customers, the employee schedule that showed 12 people earning good wages because I'd refused to give up. On a quiet Sunday morning, I finally visited Roy's grave. It had taken me 3 years to work up the courage, to feel strong enough to face him again without falling apart. The headstone was simple granite with his name and dates. Someone had left plastic flowers that had faded in the weather. Probably Karen, back when she still had money for such gestures. I stood there for a long time, not crying, not angry, just empty. This man had shaped so much of my life, had been my whole world for 17 years. Now he felt like a stranger. "You gave them everything," I said quietly, my voice carried away by the wind. "But you gave me something better. Freedom." I pulled a chocolate chip cookie from my purse, one of the same cookies that had started my business, and placed it on his headstone. Not as a gift, but as proof. Proof that I'd taken his cruelest insult and turned it into my greatest strength. Walking back to my car, I didn't look back. There was nothing left there for me to mourn or forgive. Roy Goode belonged to the past now. My future was waiting, and it was bright with possibility. The grand opening of our flagship store was everything I'd dreamed of and more. The line stretched around 3 blocks, filled with customers who'd been waiting for this day. Local news crews captured the ribbon cutting, the mayor gave a speech about female entrepreneurship, and I felt like I was floating. Behind the register, I'd hung a framed copy of Roy's final insult. "Since she can't make kids, hopefully she can go make her own money." Below it, in elegant script, I'd added, "And she did." A former neighbor who'd watched my whole journey approached the counter. "You've really changed," she said, looking around at everything we'd built. I smiled, handing her a box of cookies. "No, I just stopped apologizing for who I am." That night, after the last customer left and the doors were locked, I stood alone in my beautiful store. The display cases were nearly empty, sold out from our successful day. Tomorrow we'd fill them again, and the day after that, and the day after that. My phone buzzed with a text from Tara. "Proud of you, sis. Mom and Dad would be too." I looked around one more time at the life I'd built from nothing, at the business that bore my name with pride instead of shame. Roy had tried to leave me with nothing, but he'd actually given me everything I needed to succeed. The motivation to prove him wrong. The cookie I'd left on his grave had probably been eaten by birds by now, but the empire I'd built would last forever.